it's like this ambiguous thing. So why do we have to do it now? So write it down, make a schedule. You're going to do these things, and this is the time frame that you need to do them. If you miss the mark, okay, that's okay. Don't beat yourself up, but let's get back on track and follow a schedule. And parents are reporting that once they put a schedule in writing, so the student understands what is to happen next, it alleviates the anxiety and helps the student understand the expectations for the day, and it's concrete. So if you want to build in some downtime, sure, build that into the schedule. Definitely build outside time into the schedule. Have a conversation with the child about things that need to happen and what order would they like to do them in. Get their input to the schedule, but write it down and have it be concrete. That piece is really important, making sure that they can manage it. Again, make sure there's definite outside time incorporated. And for those students that have, certain needs, I just, a real quick story, the most alive and stimulated I personally have ever felt was when I learned to ride a motorcycle, because it engages the right brain, the left brain. You have to think about every little piece of it while you're using every part of your body. I mean, everything about me was engaged in that activity, and it was the most alive I had ever felt. So
Wow.
what that connects for me is that students that are challenged like this, they need to actively be doing something physical while the brain is working. So that is an important piece. So if kids can have a treadmill and they can listen to the story while they're walking on the treadmill, if they can bounce a ball while they're doing math facts. I had one student that, in order to review material for a test or like vocabulary, we would kind of review the words before, and then we would go outside and we'd have a basketball, and I would give him the word. And if he could give me the definition, he got to take a shot with the basketball. And if he missed, he had to give me 5 push-ups. And he was motivated by that because he knew he was going to get physical activity in. And that was the best responses I ever got out of him.
Wow. That sounds very interesting.
Amazing.
But I want to tell you that I'm not a student per se, but my breakfast time has changed. It's now 12 o'clock, 11 o'clock, and but the thing is that how did you get into this? How do you understand this? Do you have to be like, in Alcoholics or Narcotics Anonymous, they tell you have to be a user in order for you to understand. How do you explain your understanding of what they need to do?
Well, it's interesting. Growing up, I never knew that I had ADD. As a matter of fact, I didn't realize until I was in my early 40s. I was reading a book titled Driven to Distraction, which was written by 2 psychiatrists who were doing case studies on adults that told their life stories. And at the end of their stories, typically they were diagnosed with attention deficit disorder. And I read this particular story where it was my life story. It was my life story. And I realized that was why life was always so hard for me. That was my mantra. Why is life so hard? Why is life so hard? School is hard. Relationships are hard. Everything is hard. And when I got into education, I still didn't know that was my issue, that I had ADD. But when I was in college, I had to do the laundry and walk the dogs and go for a walk and vacuum the floor and mop the floor. And I did all these things, and I always beat myself up because I felt like I was procrastinating. And I wasn't procrastinating. I was getting the physical input I needed in order to get my brain organized to sit down and effectively do schoolwork. And I would say to friends, man, that assignment took me forever. God, they're like, really? It only took me half an hour or whatever. So I started seeing signs in college, but growing up, my parents had a very structured household. And so the anxiety was minimized because I knew what was going to happen and when it was going to happen and what the expectations were. So there was no ambiguity, and it was so rote that I didn't have to put any mental energy behind it. So growing up, I also went to a school where they had just started desegregation up in Indianapolis, Indiana. And I went to school knowing how to read. Many of the students in class had never seen a book. So for the first 4 years of school, I was the teacher's pet. I was motivated to get my schoolwork done so that I could go help other kids. So it was easy for me. And then I was motivated because I wanted to beat my older brother. So there was always this competition. That's how I stayed motivated, and no one ever knew. And plus, as females are traditionally missed being diagnosed, especially in our age group. More males are diagnosed, especially boys, in their earlier years because it's more evident. But girls are missed a lot. Anyway, so once I realized that was my issue, it helped me understand why I always gravitated to those students that were more challenging, that had more challenges. You know, it was interesting when I was in high school, when I would get up to go turn in my assignment, I always knew that kid in class who would forget to turn their assignment in. So I'd walk past them and say, hey, give me your assignment, I'll go turn it in for you. I just intrinsically did that because I knew certain kids needed help. And so I became a special ed teacher. That's what I gravitated towards. I knew that those were the kids that I just would understand best, and I didn't know why until I was diagnosed with ADD. And now I understand, and when I explain what's happened to me and my thought processes and experiences I've had and my reactions to them, the kids' eyes get huge, and they're like, wow, she gets me. There's somebody that understands me now. So they're able to communicate with me and just be open with me. And then I can express to the parents and help them understand what's going on.
All right, we don't have a lot more time left, but I want to say that I totally understand having somebody like you. When I was in high school, and I come from a third world country, so this is something that probably is being done now, maybe not, but having somebody to understand what I was going through would have been helpful. In fact, what I did do is isolate myself because I thought nobody understood. I thought nobody would get it. I was the only one that was getting it. Before we run out of time, I would like you to give us your information where people, my listeners, can actually get to you. So if you have a website, a phone number, email address, something like that, that people can reach you, if you want to give us that now, that would be fantastic.
Well, thank you for this opportunity, Toddy, because yes, it would have made a big difference for a lot of people. And it is not understood by the mainstream teachers at this point. So I would be helpful in that regard as well. You can get information from LoriStevensLLC.com. That's LORI at LORISTEPHENS LLC.com. I also have a camp that focuses on executive functioning and life skills, and that is lifeskillsprepcamp.com.
Phone number?
It's out on the web, is 941-345-7574.
I want to say thank you so much for taking the time out to share your information with us. And I think that there's more that needs to be said and done with respect to what you do, because one, I think it's a needed service that many teachers, one could could benefit from, as well as the parents could benefit from. When we are parents, when we become parents, we don't get a rule book or a handbook that says, here, this is how you behave if you have a kid, and that's a normal kid. But what if you have a kid that is not considered normal but special needs? Then you worse yet, you don't have any handbook that says what do you do with them. So having multiple kids is something. We have to go now, so I thank you so much for joining us and for sharing your information with us. And to the audience, I want to thank you for listening. I want to thank you for joining us. And please join us again for another episode of Jadoo Lifestyle on societybiteradio.com.